Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into some incredibly fascinating source material that is literally going to flip how you think about studying right on its head. We're talking about strategies that totally rewrite the rules, letting you work way smarter so you can actually master whatever subject you're tackling. Let's get right into it. Okay, think about how we usually study. We sit down, pop open some massive, heavy textbook, and try to just cram every single tiny detail, like 100% of the page, directly into our brains. And honestly, it's exhausting. Plus, it usually doesn't even work. But what if you only needed to learn 20% of a topic to actually master the whole thing? Seriously, what if true expertise isn't about memorizing every little fact, but about intensely focusing on exactly the right pieces of the puzzle? Well, let's dive into this. Our sources call this the 20% core. The 20% core represents the absolute essential, load-bearing concepts of any subject. It's like finding the foundational pillars of a house. By focusing on this core, you unlock the vast majority of the knowledge for the entire topic. You completely shift your focus away from trying to memorize every obscure detail, and instead you zoom right in on those big foundational ideas. This is the absolute secret to accelerated learning. You're spending your energy on the stuff that actually moves the needle. So you might be wondering, how do we actually grab hold of that 20% core? Well, we do it by building what the material refers to as mental model maps. When you come across a complex new idea, you don't just shove it into some isolated, dusty corner of your brain. Instead, you deliberately wire it directly to things you already know. You use relatable, real-world examples to really anchor it down. By mapping things out like this, you naturally start to nurture expert-level thinking skills. You stop seeing a subject as just a random pile of disconnected facts, and you start seeing the matrix, how all the pieces seamlessly interlock. But here's the catch. To really map those models out, we need a practical, everyday tool to make sure we aren't just fooling ourselves. We need to know if we've actually captured that 20% core. And that brings us to a massively effective technique from the source material. Get ready for the Ultimate Explainer Challenge. This is derived from the famous Feynman simulation, and it is a remarkably fast way to pressure test your true comprehension of literally anything. Okay, here are the rules for the Feynman simulation, and I want you to put yourself right in the driver's seat for a second. First, imagine your audience is an 8-year-old or, I don't know, maybe a highly intelligent alien who just landed on Earth and knows absolutely nothing about our world. Your mission? Explain your new concept to them as simply as humanly possible. But here is the true challenge. You have to do it in exactly 3 sentences. No more, no less. It sounds so easy at first, right? But condensing complex information into just 3 simple sentences forces you to know exactly what you are talking about. Let's test this out in real time. We'll use a super concrete example from our source material featuring a character named Captain Spark. So imagine, you've just spent 3 hours reading all about physics, aerodynamics, and complex propulsion systems. Now you sit down in front of that imaginary 8-year-old, and they look up at you and ask a very simple foundational question. How does a rocket launch? Let's break down Captain Spark's 3-sentence answer. Sentence 1, a rocket pushes hot gas out its bottom very fast. Boom. Clear, highly visual, and super simple. Sentence 2, this pushing makes the rocket go up into the sky. Okay, now we've got action and reaction. Sentence 3, it's like when you let air out of a balloon and it flies away. Notice what he did there? He completely bypassed the complicated jargon, no mention of thrust or gravity, and instead he anchored the whole concept to a real-world example an 8-year-old already totally gets: a balloon. That, my friends, is the Feynman simulation in action. Now, the absolute most critical part of this exercise happens the second you finish your explanation. You have to pause, step back, and ask yourself the most important question of the entire test. Where did I get stuck while explaining it? Did you struggle to explain why the pushing makes the rocket go up? Did you kind of fumble around trying to explain gravity without using all the big fancy textbook words? You know that really uncomfortable feeling of fumbling for words? We usually see that as a failure, right? Well, actually, scratch that. We need to completely reframe it. That moment of friction is a vital clue, and it's known as gap detection. Getting stuck doesn't mean you failed. It simply means you've successfully found a hidden gap in your knowledge before the actual exam ever could. It's a total win. So the crucial takeaway here is understanding the sheer power of this gap. A gap is not a bad thing. It's literally your ultimate learning clue. Instead of feeling defeated, that gap is flashing a giant neon sign telling you, aha, This right here is the specific, localized area where you need to do a little more research. This is the very essence of working smarter. It gives you what the experts call just-in-time support. By pinpointing your specific gap, you completely avoid the exhausting, soul-crushing trap of rereading an entire 50-page chapter. You know exactly which single concept to go back and fix. And this brilliantly illustrates how the Feynman simulation acts as this amazing universal tool. For struggling learners, the test is fantastic because it pinpoints exactly what they need help with. It allows for highly targeted interventions instead of just general, overwhelming frustration. On the flip side, for advanced learners, it pushes them to take incredibly complex, dense ideas and strip them all the way down to their simplest forms. And as any expert will tell you, the ability to simplify is the ultimate sign of true mastery. For both groups, it builds massive confidence because you're actively learning how to unstick yourself. Zooming out for a second, let's look at the bigger picture and see how this shapes our whole philosophy on learning. We are talking about a massive, fundamental shift from passive consumption to active creation. The old way, just staring blankly at a textbook, rereading your yellow highlights over and over and hoping the information magically seeps into your brain, that's passive consumption. And honestly, it's wildly ineffective. But using the Feynman test, speaking out loud, mapping out your mental models, that is active creation. This brings us to a really incredible quote straight from the source material. Being the teacher is the highest form of learning. Really let that sink in for a second. When you are forced to explain something, you are actively building your own understanding from the ground up. You are literally forging new neural pathways in your brain to bridge ideas together for someone else. You aren't just memorizing a script, you are comprehending the material on a deep, structural level. Which leads us perfectly to this fundamental, incredibly empowering takeaway. Learning is creation, not consumption. When you take a dense, intimidating concept, strip it down to its 20% core, and then reassemble it into 3 simple sentences for an imaginary 8-year-old, you're creating knowledge within yourself. You are becoming the architect of your own mind, not just a passive storage container for data. So, I want to leave you with a direct challenge to put this into practice today. What new concept are you going to explain to an imaginary 8-year-old, or a friend, or hey, even your dog? Pick a topic you're currently studying or maybe just something you've been trying to wrap your head around lately. Set your timer and try the 3-sentence Feynman simulation. See where you get stuck, absolutely embrace that gap when you find it, and become an active creator of your own knowledge. Try it out and watch how ridiculously fast your understanding transforms. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy learning!